Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to Facebook Live. It is the 15th of September, year 2021. We are getting started and welcome. Hope everyone had a wonderful week. And right now we are midweek. Today is Wednesday. So what is it called? Hump Day. So here we are. We are joined by some members of our panel and some members of our group. So we are joined here with April being from the panel. April is our one and only psychic, and she has quite a few modalities of healing. So Reiki healer, you've done massage therapy, hypnotherapy, quite a few things. So a big resume. So welcome, April. Good evening. And then we have our incredible Eileen, who's joined us finally after 2 weeks after a long time. Eileen has been like consistently here. I'm like eternally grateful to her for being here year after year. So this is like our second 1 year up, right? More than a year. She's been here almost every Wednesday. So Eileen is here. And then we are joined by our members. Michelle is here. Good evening, Michelle. And then we have a new member that has joined for the very first time, being a new member on this group. She's had the courage to say, I'm going to join this Facebook Live and see what it is all about. Welcome, Diane. And then, of course, our brilliant Summer is here too. Good evening, Summer. So I'm going to copy and paste this post that came up a few. Let's see if it pastes. There we go. And I'm going to, Eileen, can you do me a favor? Oh, actually, are you ready?
I didn't finish, but do you want me, I can pause?
Or can you read this for us, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
No problem. So I'm really struggling to understand something. If we are all connected souls, we have a purpose. What about abuse? I'll explain. I have a friend who I was there for during a very difficult time in her life. Spent hours on the phone, calming her down and helping her through suicidal ideation and a very difficult time in her life. I was happy to do this for her. One day she stopped talking to me and told a mutual friend she just didn't want to be reminded of that very difficult time in her life. I was a little hurt, but understood and went on with my life. Now I am in a different mental space since having my spiritual awakening and understand being of service is one of the highest forms of love and God's or the universe's expression to one another. Well, she's reached out to me again after years. She's back into that bad place. She wants me to be there again. And she has other friends she talks to. She's by no means without support. She only reaches out to me when in need. It is emotionally draining. At what length do I allow others to use me? How do you balance this? We are all connected. I know, and I don't hold animosity towards her, but how important it is for me to give into my ego and self-care. Thanks for reading my dilemma.
Thank you so much, Eileen. April, did you want to get started? What would you offer as an advice to this person?
I actually remember reading this. I caught this in the group and I read through it. I don't think I commented when I seen it. I seen that many others had commented. Yeah. So when you pulled it up, I was like, oh, I've already read this. So she has a couple different questions in here. I'm really struggling to understand if we're all connected and we all have a purpose. What about abuse? And, we have explained the purpose of abuse on this panel. And currently, as the dynamics are set up here on Earth, unfortunately, they include what we call abuse. Again, my dream is that we will get to this space where abuse won't be needed to learn life lessons. We won't have to have that contrast of hot, cold, light, heavy, dark, light to learn our lessons. We will just be loving and kind and caring. We won't have to learn to be that way. We won't have to learn to appreciate, to have gratitude. We will just automatically be in those spaces. And then when she goes on to talk about this friend, my first thought when I read it was there's always kind of a line, whether it's friendships, whether it's family, whether it's your job, there is a line where there's boundaries. And when it becomes something that's too taxing on you, you have to draw the line. So what I usually tell people is, if you want to give to this person, then you just give to that person without any expectations, without any wanting back. You don't even, ultimately, you really don't even care if you get a thank you. That's not what you're doing it for. You're doing it simply because you want to do it. You feel the need or the pull to do it, and you give graciously. So when you give from that space, what you need to understand is that there's nothing being taken from you when you're giving from that space. When you have some sort of expectation, or you don't really want to give, or you don't really want to do it, that is where it starts taxing on your energy. That's where it becomes draining. And so my suggestion would be, is if you cannot do it from that space of grace, from that space of presence, where you literally do not want anything back, don't do it. The other thing is Eckhart, he does a really good example of this, of explaining of how to be in presence with somebody. When you are in presence, power with somebody, you understand their problem, but you don't join in with their problem. You don't emotionally or energetically dance with their problem. You don't take it on. So you can listen, I listen all day. I listen all day, literally, because I went to say at work, and then I realized, I remembered I was a mom. So literally, legitly, I listen all day, but I don't get emotionally entangled. So if you can do that as well, then you're good. And so the boundaries, we always think boundaries are outside of us. Like, I have to cut that person off. But a lot of times the boundaries, when Eckhart is doing his work and he's talking to somebody and he's in presence, that's a boundary. I have created a boundary of presence around me, and I can still love you and I can spread that love and that energy, but I don't get all caught up in the drama. Does that all make sense?
Beautiful. Thank you so much, April. So one of the things that I noticed was, and Kim had this question asked by one of the attendees for School of Awakening. And if anybody's done School of Awakening, they probably saw this question come through. It almost is, this person has that same kind of personality, like they are looking for their own validation through this other friend asking them the question. Look, I'm such a good listener, and do you see that, April? Look, I'm such a good therapist that this friend keeps coming back to me over and over again with her suicidal ideation. Right? Because the moment she went to others, that's here she says, I have a friend who I was there for during a very difficult time. Then she says, she or he says, I was a little hurt, but understood. Why would you get hurt? Like you say, right? If you gave selflessly, if you were in presence and you offered the spaciousness of presence to the other, and that's how you provided them support during their suicidal ideation, then renounce the fruit of the action, selflessly give and sacrifice. It's gone, it's done. That present moment is over with, but now you're ruminating. You're ruminating over what you did, right? And then you're feeling hurt.
Well, the part that caught me where it would indicate that is she says, she doesn't hold animosity, but how important is it for me to give into my ego and self-care? So that's the part where I thought, well, what is, and I think that really, when you become truly on this path, I think that you are able to give, truly just give in presence without wanting anything in return. But perhaps when she first did this, yes, we often take the role of healer, helper, savior, and it does give us a sense of identity often, many times. But the giving into the ego is an interesting statement to me, because that tells me, kind of like what you're saying, it's not ego to help somebody. It's also not ego to say no. That's a boundary. It's okay to say, I can't do that. So self-care is not ego. Many people get that so confused, but the truth is that and all of it, especially us women, but many of the men, if we don't practice self-care for years, till we end up flat on our face and then go, oh, maybe I should meditate, maybe, so yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Eileen, did you want to say something about this?
Sorry, I was just laughing because that's what my meditation was about last night.
Self-care?
Yes, our group meditation talking about self-care and having compassion for ourselves. So easy to have it for others, but we don't have it for ourselves. And something else that jumped out at me is that the person who wrote said, she only reaches out to me when in need. And something that's kind of been with me for a long time, not just the last 2 years, is so like friends, like over the years, friends would become not friends because they have these expectations and these requirements. And if you don't meet their expectation or meet their requirement, it's like, oh, you're not my friend anymore because you don't call me at least once a week. We don't go out on the weekend at least once a month. Like there's just things that to me adults shouldn't even do. But anyway, and to me, I'm reading that and I'm like, she only reaches out to me when in need. But like, if we're a friend or somebody who feels like they have, gone through a spiritual awakening, when people are in need, that is when you're providing grace and flexibility and compassion and understanding. It's not like it's only when that to me, that's saying that she is expecting something else in return, that person does something for her when they're not in need. And so, me, I go to things with absolutely no expectation. And that no expectation for others, no expectations for myself. And it's peaceful. And then you have the capacity and the empathy and the compassion to be able to help others when they're in need. That's my 2 cents.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Ali. I think that capacity, that infinite capacity to give, the infinite capacity to have compassion, and you can always, Sean Aker had this beautiful example where I think he wrote some book on happiness, and I watched him on Super Soul Sunday. Oprah interviewed him, and he said, it's not about your glass being half empty. It's not knowing that you have a pitcher on the side that you can always keep refilling your glass, right? And it goes back to that self-care, that you can always go meditate, you can always deepen your presence power all the more deeper. But what came up in my mind when April was talking about offering that spaciousness of presence, or having presence, like just allowing that field of spaciousness, was Eckhart's story about his neighbor who knocked on his door like very urgently, and it's in the New Earth, right? She came with lots of papers, having some issue with her landlord, and she went off, and Eckhart just sat there, right? Offered her spaciousness, and she went off about, oh, they are mean people, they want my money and all that. And then she looked at him, and after a while, she looked at him and said, this is not really important, is it? And he said, yes, it's not that important. And then she left. She picked up the papers and left. And next day in the morning, he met her at the stairwell, and she said, what did you do to me? I slept the best night's sleep last night, right? And all he did was offer her spaciousness. So having that capacity to offer spaciousness is needed. So thank you, Eileen. So the self-care is know that picture, and that picture is the meditation, the developing our own presence practice.
Yeah,
So-
and I get putting up boundaries. I'm not saying, letting people take advantage of you, but I get putting up boundaries, but I feel like sometimes that's used not inappropriately, but people putting up boundaries, like they don't know their own strength, their own ability to like be there for people, like just in presence. So I think we just have to be careful, because sometimes we can put up boundaries, but they're not really boundaries. They're more like walls, like not gonna do anything for anyone or help. I mean, I feel like
help anyone.
exactly. So
And to that, I don't even call it a boundary, because boundary seems like something that the ego would make the other an other, and make the other an enemy, and say there's a wall. What I would call it is what Eckhart calls it as self-compassion. I need to have self-compassion, that I need my quiet time.
Yeah.
Like I need my 2 hours of meditation. So if you're expecting that I'll be on the phone with you and talk to you for an hour, there's a high quality no, right? I'm going to say, no, I need to do my meditation. I'm not going to be on the phone with you. I cannot call you today. I'll call you over the weekend or whenever I have time. So
exactly.
it's just a high quality no. So thank you. Beautiful. Michelle, did you have something to say to this?
Yeah, I had also seen it during
The post, right?
online. Yeah, did see the post. I don't think I responded either, April. It caught my attention, but I totally agree with what April and Eileen have already stated. And I think what I could add to that is I think she might be in a space, from what I'm reading here, is where she knows that from the personality perspective, we have these expectations and we want the give and take, and to have offered her assistance or her presence during that period, that dark period in her friend's life, and then to be ignored, that caused her pain because I was there for you, and this is how you think, right? Because we're always thinking it's an exchange. But I think she's also struggling with that because I think she wants to be that person that is open and present, but it's like she's in between. So what caught my eye was on the second paragraph where it stated, at what length do I allow others to use me? So there, I do believe the ego is obviously, that's the one that's talking there. And so, well, it's only when you need me, or when you need a sounding board. So I think maybe this person's in her life to kind of like be a mirror for her, and to show her where she's struggling with, being present for someone that's obviously coming to you because if they're coming back, then that's almost, you could take that as a sign, say, well, this really worked maybe the first time. And I could see how that other person stated and maybe kept some distance. Because if it was so dark of a period, and maybe she did help her get out of it, but it reminded her. I've had friends that we were good friends since high school, and had her own child with special needs. And I thought that would bond us, right? Because we both have children with special needs. And she went like the other way, like never talked to me about it, never like, and I'm like, well, maybe it's because I'm a mirror, right? She doesn't maybe want to do, and I tried not to judge her because everybody has their path, but it's not always an easy thing to do at the level of the personality, but once you get deeper into presence, you try to like, okay, let go of all that expectation and all that give and take, right? That transactional relationship. And then if we could just be there as real presence and real listening, then all that self-talk kind of diminishes.
So the portion that you're saying, thank you, Michelle.
Yeah.
At what length do I allow others to use me?
Yeah.
How do you balance this, right? So it almost is, again, words of hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can sense the heart in those questions. And what is hurt is the ego. And why is the ego hurt? In this instance, while we were offering the help, to the one insidious thing of the ego that everyone needs to know is identity. The ego will build an identity through a thought formation, and the identity here is, I am helping my friend with a suicidal ideation. Mm-hmm. And now you become like the go-to person for this person. And the moment she took away that go-to person, once she took away the identity, it almost is like a death. It's like a death of a loved one. That identity is gone. You know how many parents, like mothers, if their child passes away, they're like at a loss, like they've lost their mind, because that's such a huge identity. And it's an identity that for centuries is written in our psyche, right? Genetically, it's written in our psyche that we are female and we are a mother, and boom, that identity, you had an only child, your only child got taken away, right? And that identity is pulled. And the moment the identity is pulled, the ego will start. It'll start like the depression, like Byron Katie says, right? Depression is the greatest, what is it? What does she say? It is the greatest, I forget the words that she, like it almost is like the ego plays that role of the one that is in depression, because that identity gets taken away. We were so identified all these years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years with The same thing with wife. The moment the wife identity is taken away, like we lost our partner, right? The moment the partner is lost, it's like some women or men, the moment the partner is lost, or you go through a divorce, it's
Mhm.
again the loss of the identity, right? Who am I? Who am I now? If I'm not wife of so and so or a husband of so and so, all these years, for decades, I was husband of so and so, right? So I think that's what's associated with that
Mhm.
hurt. At what length do I allow this to use me?
Yeah. I think right there is like, okay, you're stabbing the ego in its, where it hurts the most, you know?
Yep.
And
Yeah,
I
I
do
had a-
agree, like that self-care part, we have to always have time to like, and some people are able to hold that presence for a longer period. And there's others that can't, that, need to, and it's important to know where you are there, because you don't want to give more than you have to give, you know.
You were saying something, April?
Yeah, I had when Michelle brought that up, I had a thought that I think that this person, um, I think that, perhaps the identity was wrapped up in the helping, but I also think that she thought maybe this was a friendship, which it was not a friendship. But then it hit me, if this person is coming to you because they're suicidal, they're not capable of having a friendship. They're not in a good space. They're not, that's the level that they're functioning at. They're at a very low level. So they are only there for someone to pick them up, not to reciprocate, not to give back out. And then we don't know, she disappeared for a long time. You don't really know how she was while she was gone. That doesn't mean she like had this happy magical life. But I think it's a key point to say that she most likely doesn't have the capability to have the kind of friendship this person's looking for.
And so it works the reverse. The identity works the reverse on the friend with the suicidal ideation. She is so attached to her, because I've had this with a couple of members of our group over the past 5 years. Like I walked them through the teacher called suffering portion, where Eckhart says how identified the ego finds the victim identity, like it is very seductive, like it can't even pull itself out, right, out of the victim identity. And so if she's trying to strip the suicidal ideation off of her friend, the friend is fighting back, right? Who am I without that suicidal thought and the drama? Like what Summer wrote, that's a lot of self-talk to not get caught up in their drama, right? That kind of like brought me to that she must be generating thoughts of drama, because suicidal is like you're thinking thoughts that are negative and more negative and more negative, depressive thoughts, right? And now as a therapist, you're trying to strip the other person of their thoughts. So of course they're going to get up and leave. Who am I without my suicidal tendencies? Right? So that's what caused the separation, because you're trying to take them, and it has caused separation here in the group. Like they would get up and leave the group, because I would say there's a victim identity. You have to look at the victim identity. You cannot progress without letting go of the victim identity. There has to be forgiveness. There has to be, to know that there's nothing to forgive. That moment could not have been anything else other than what it was. It couldn't have been otherwise, right? Except as it is. Right, April? that moment needed to be exactly how it is.
Yeah, it takes people a while to get there. But once you do start on this path and you do start to really, really embrace that, it has to become a fundamental part of your being, almost as if it was your DNA, to really, really understand that everything has happened as it should. That doesn't mean that it was the most joyous time, for sure. I can promise you that many moments in my life were not joyous, but they were there on purpose, and I'm okay with all of that. If you have that sense that it was done on purpose and that it will be okay and that you are okay. And again, I always go back to that presence power, that the source that's within me. There is a piece of me that cannot be damaged, that cannot be hurt. There's that part. You have to learn to, that doesn't mean that you don't have a day where you lay down and maybe you don't get up and maybe you don't want to talk to anybody, or that doesn't mean you don't have any of those times ever, but they do become much less. But you learn to hold that space. The more you do this, the more you learn to hold that space. And then, like Eckhart's teaching now is, and well, he's been teaching, but when the adversity comes, instead of our first reaction is normally, well, in America, is to fight, right? We fight, we reject it, we go against it. That's the first reaction. But as you go down this path, the more and more that I get adversity, except for my youngest daughter, she gets me pretty good, that one. But you learn to just not even let it really get you upset in the first place, because you have that idea that this is all with the divine's work at play. So you carry that sense of peace with you more. Samar's talking about, we had a talk yesterday, and the talk was about watching your inner thoughts, not replaying those old stories, which is kind of what this lady is doing, is replaying part of her old stories. And that's where she's saying, now that's a lot of self-talk, because to me, the most important conversation that you have is with yourself. And we're constantly talking to ourselves. So that's one of the things that she's bringing up. Hi, Kelly.
Thank you so much, April. So I posted back the excerpt that we are discussing, Kelly. Good evening. And Kelly is here after a few weeks as well. So honored to have you, Kelly. He's our one and only Qigong teacher on this panel, and a spiritual teacher. Welcome. And we're discussing this question. This was a post on our Facebook group, and we were discussing it. So you can put your thoughts, Kelly. I know you may have missed what April said and Aline said and Michelle said, but.
Well, I feel that the main question, well, what part of the main question is, at what length do I allow others to use me? And we're talking about the concept of abuse. And abuse is always about power. Abuse is always about using another person to validate one's own ego, whatever level or depth of darkness that entails. Having grown up with several narcissists as friends and learning how to get out of an unstable and an abusive relationship that was that turned into a marriage and a divorce, and all that learning process. First and foremost, until you actually understand that you're on the receiving end of abuse or being used emotionally, mentally, it is hard to identify those spaces. It's necessary to understand always our own ego attachment to certain spaces, and how there can be synergy between people's shadows and people's egos to perpetuate the abuse and to keep it continuing. And the use, the letting other people use us to validate their egos is sort of the main root cause, the main root symptom of ego attachment in the world. And we all have this lesson to learn over and over and over again to varying degrees. Even after you develop a space where you are solid and a person cannot energetically invade your space or take advantage of your energy at all, you still have to be vigilant, and you still have to understand what those spaces of manipulation feel like and look like, and how they register in your awareness, and what that means to you and why. And there's the other part of the question is, how important is it for me to give into my ego and self-care? Taking care of yourself is sometimes about ego, sometimes about wanting to have that sort of, a little bit of rebelliousness and take back control. And that can be done in ego for sure. But self-care and self-love is something that a lot of people have a hard time with. slowing the mind down and slowing the chatter down, and being still inside and being aligned with our heart and feeling the information of our soul in our body is really, really important. That takes practice, and that kind of practice is self-care. So every time you are practicing being present, you are practicing self-care. And that is very important to understand. And a lot of people are conditioned to not believe in self-care or self-love, or to look at it through a very, very distorted lens of perception, that they can't do that for themselves because they have to do all these other things for other people. And, as someone who's been a teacher for over 20 years, there is a lot of parallels being a teacher and being a parent. I mean, I've got 4 kids in my life now, and it's, I really haven't had to change coats or shoes or glasses to step into the role of being sort of a parental figure or a friend for these young people I find in my life now. The reality is that in some respects, because there is more energetic output supporting others that are very immediate, and unlike being a teacher, I can go home or turn off the Zoom and go back to my be at home already. When you have kids, when you have young people in your life, you have to be a lot more disciplined with your self-care. And this is also, now I know a lot of people talk about boundaries, and boundaries are sort of like the first point of reference for understanding how to limit interactions and how to limit the energetic drain of giving too much away to others. And this is sort of one of the main things about recognizing abuse, recognizing the contrast with actual self-care, is understanding the relaxation response in the body and in the mind, and how much those give us feedback in terms of the actual spaces we're participating in. And there's other, okay, a lot of long questions here.
Are you done with that one question?
Yeah, the other thing is, yeah, the whole last sort of like little bit is like recognizing when someone only connects with you when they want to use you, when they want something from you, and doesn't actually try to maintain a friendship. That's a flag on the play. And that's usually an indication that someone is just a user and doesn't actually understand healthy communication. And, you know, maybe that's a topic to bring up with them, is actually having healthy communication instead of them just coming and just, you know, flat out state that you have this issue, that you recognize this issue in the relationship, in the friendship or whatever. So I'll just leave it there because there's a lot.
Eileen, did you want to read that question from Zachary?
Yes, that sounds funny hearing you say that.
Why?
Zachary is my son, but that's not my son. Every time I hear that name. Zachary asks, for a conscious world, is physical discipline hitting ever necessary at all for kids? It seems like a very controversial question because so many humans are raised like that and some claim it works well. Personally, I grew up like that as a kid, including domestic violence, but intuitively, I never felt any inclination toward the idea for anybody. But I've seen at least semi-conscious like people claim to find it useful, but never really seemed right to me. Seems like it could be an ego thing, like a parent or teacher being fulfilled by inflicting someone else in pain.
April, you want to get started on that question? Abuse.
Yeah. Well, it's very difficult and it is a very sensitive topic. This is one of the topics that emotions tend to fly with people. So humanity has been this way for many years. Now, there were some families mixed into the norms of the way it was that did not use physical abuse or physical violence as a means of punishment, as a means of getting children to behave. Most of them did, and most of them, it literally was just the way it was. Society has these norms that it follows, and those norms morph and change as society grows and evolves. So my example again is, you know, back in the 50s or whatever, women didn't really work. They just didn't. They stayed home. You went to school, you went to high school. Getting out of high school, you were supposed to get married. That was the goal of life. Get married, get a job, go work for GM. Life is perfect, right? This was the societal norm. It was also norm that men didn't do housework and they didn't cook dinner, and there was a lot of abuse. So but I do find that is changing, and new ways of parenting are emerging. I think that there are very effective ways that you can discipline children without actually hitting them. And yes, for many parents in the past, I do think that there was some sense of fulfillment of them being able to get their anger and their rage out because they weren't very good at managing it. So it did come out on the children. And there was this whole, you know, listen to me or I'll knock you across the room type mentality. And that is the way it is. But I have seen that, you know, you can teach children without it. And I have to say actually one of my friends comes to mind with this. Some of the most well-behaved, well-mannered, conscious, moral children I have ever seen have come from parents that never ever hit their children. They never hit them. And but they had conversations with them. They had guidance with them. They did more of a teaching, but yet there were also some lines that were drawn that were, you can't speak to me that way. So I think that he is correct in what he's saying, and I do think that that is changing, and I think it should change. I have to say, when I had my children, that was one of my goals, that I would not do that. I would not hit my kids. But I certainly was guilty of, when my older girls were younger, of saying, you know what, you need a good swat on the tuchus. So, but for the most part, I did not hit my children. That was one of my biggest goals, was to not parent that way. And we did a lot of talking. I did a lot of talking, and that really works. So I'm just going to leave it there. That is such a sensitive topic. So.
Thank you so much, April. So before I respond, is it Gauto? I didn't quite catch the name. I see a raised hand. I just wanted to let you know, anybody speaking or anybody on the video is going to be recorded. So did you want to say something? I think you're on mute, Gauto. Gauto Jorge?
Yes.
Did you have a question for us?
No, I would like to add a little.
Okay.
My view, I raised an 18-year-old Catholic. He's in his last year in Catholic school. I do agree with teaching without violence, or even discipline. I taught this young man through skills. This is the skill. This is useful. It's your choice. Either you use it or not. Just gonna put a little example. He never wanted to drive. He started driving at 17. 4 days into it, he was a pro. So on the way home, he did everything he wanted, all mistakes. Coming into the driveway, pulled out his phone to use it. I grabbed it out of his hand. A little abrupt, but I was trying to make a point. I wasn't upset. I'm giving him a special teaching. So I grabbed the phone, I come home, and I tell him, look, young man, you're 17 years old. I cook for you, I do everything. Now it's time for you to start cooking for yourself. Well, the whole story. So he got away with ordering food from his mom. He got away with having dinner. The next morning, at 11, he was shaving. So I stood by him. Said, Dad, I need you to take me to the friend's house. Dad, are you gonna let me drive? I said, well, son, look, you drive with your mother, you already know. I taught you a skill, I taught you how to drive. And I'm gonna let you drive. But if you drive the way you want to, when I showed you the proper way, then you drive by yourself or with other people the way you drive. But if I taught you the correct way, the way not to get tickets, not get accident, and you know it, but you don't want to do it, then you don't drive with me. So ever since, he's been doing a pretty good job. I'm sorry for interfering. I'm done.
Thank you so much for your input.
You're welcome. You ever heard a simile? There's two moms with 2 5-year-olds at the supermarket. At the cashier's out. One drops a gallon of milk, the other one a jar of honey. The one with the jar of honey slaps them, call them stupid, look what you did. So that's a teaching, a discipline, the way I got. The other mom, a little smarter, said, son, look what a dumb thing you did. You weren't cautious. You dropped the milk. I'm sorry, Mom. I'll do better next time.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm going to put you on mute, okay?
Okay.
Thank you. So we are joined with Caesar as well. Caesar's joined the panel. Caesar is our medium on the panel. And you've done channeling. I always get confused. You've done channeling. And as a spiritual teacher, are you able to see the question, Caesar? Because I think in the chat, if you've already posted the question, you're not able to read it, but I did copy and paste it. So when it comes to your turn, just make sure we are talking about that question, okay? Thank you. Sorry about that. I had to make sure that Caesar knew what the question was. So going back, April, I think it is a conditioned pattern in society, right? Collective unconsciousness. This is chapter 5 of Eckhart's A New Earth, the pain body. The pain body tends to repeat the patterns that we've had for thousands of years. And it seems like physical abuse is one of the patterns that we've repeated. Is it if all of us were, and this is the dream, or this is the rocket of desire that April and I have, is if we get to that level of compassion where we are in the golden age, then it's only going to be love and loving kindness and compassion. There's not going to be any hitting. Everybody will have a sweet, even the way humans, one, we won't have the density of the body. And then when we speak, we will speak in such a sweet tone that the sweetness in itself will be understood by the other. To the other side of it, where one day Caesar mentioned, we may not even speak, we may be psychically just communicating to each other in the golden age. Why do we even have to speak a language then, right? So April and I are wishing for that level of explosion and advancement in consciousness. So Michelle, you want to say something about this?
I think I'm gonna just listen in right now. I think I understand, what where we are and where April was kind of mentioning, where we are as a civilization, and we're on a continuum, and hopefully we'll get to the other side where hitting is not the norm, but we've been conditioned through generations that is the way we discipline, and we discipline out of love. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Eileen, you're a school teacher.
I was just typing a message in the chat. I was going to have to go because I need to meditate and sleep before
Okay.
the school teaching tomorrow. But I too was listening as April was speaking, and I too have done without that with my children. It doesn't mean that I haven't raised my voice more times than I would like, although that doesn't happen much in the last 2 years anymore. But I don't think I can mentally contribute any more than that because I am exhausted.
We are grateful for your presence here. Thank you. Thank you for joining me early on.
Absolutely.
Good night. Get some sleep. Caesar, we move to you. Did you want to speak about the question?
Sure. I almost feel like I know what April said verbatim. Well, a conscious person wouldn't see hitting necessary. A conscious person raising a child wouldn't see it necessary, nor would she have reason to act out in a violent way, because it's most definitely a violent action, and a conscious person doesn't act out in such a way. It's never a good idea to discipline in that way. Unfortunately, I was raised that way. Maybe if I talked to my mother, one time I was told by my father not to do that no more because it was disrespectful, and their family was a big respectful thing. And if I did it again, I probably got a whooping across my butt with the belt. And it probably only happened once, and it got the message through. I never did it again. However, it didn't take the belt, and that wasn't the reason why I didn't. Of course, I didn't want to get my butt whipped again. He explained it to me after he hit me with the belt, and really he didn't hit me hard. It was enough to get my attention. And once he got my attention, he then explained why that's not right to, acting the way I was acting. So in raising a child, I'm gonna paint a picture here. And let's say you're on your journey at the age of 50 years old when you started to become aware of, what it means to be conscious. And your child is now the ripe age of 15 and he's out of hand. Let's say you're a single mother or a single father. And at this point, your child is probably a little more out of control than you would like him to be. But because you have gained a little bit of wisdom as far as what this journey is all about and what life really is and means and what our roles here, what we came here to do, it's always about moving in the direction of love and compassion, period. So you want to address the out of control teenager. And Dr. Martin Luther King, I think, said you can't fight hatred with hatred. You can't win. Only love can do that. And he's right. So even if you're semi-conscious and you're addressing an out of control child, it is first best of all to not perceive the child as being yours and you didn't raise him like that. And I taught you better than that. And I caught the tail end of what the gentleman was just speaking on about him teaching him how to drive the car. And it kind of goes hand in hand with what I'm saying here. It's not about us. It's not about our children. We all want the best, not only for our children, but for our brothers and sisters. And that doesn't mean bloodline. We want the best for everybody around us. Yes. Having said that, explanations and reasoning and logic seems to work, because if you can understand what somebody is trying to tell you and why what you are doing doesn't make sense in this world that you want him to live in, which I think is one of peace and joy and compassion and stuff, but then you have to act in that way, because we know you get back what you feel. And so if you are angry and out of control and hateful towards your parents or somebody, and you're taking it out on your parents, well, universe, we all know, is going to offer you back some more of that. And so one way to get through to your child in a disciplinary way is give him the explanation of why what he was doing didn't seem right, because you can simply explain that, what you're doing, or how you're behaving, you are on the path to jail. You are on the path to death. I know a lot of my friends' children, in the past were, because the fathers, sometimes mothers they're separated, and the kids were out of control. And a couple of my close friends who got on this journey and reading the Totally books, gained this knowledge and changed the entire formula on which they were raising their kids, even after, their kids are 20 years old. And now I get to witness their children from being these out of control youngsters to semi-conscious children that do good and are always helping people and helping animals. And it is because of the example that the parents set. And it probably didn't have anything to do with what they said to them, even through explanation. I think all in all, at the end of the day, it was their actions that the kids decided, I want the result of how my father acts. I want that peace. I want that joy. It feels good to help others. I want to feel good. You have to make a conscious choice at some point. But as far as getting back to the question, as far as hitting, it's not a conscious behavior, no. So if you are one who is even semi-conscious, you should know and understand it is wrong. You have to attack everything in a loving manner. Now you can provide tough love, take other measures, grounding, and not only just grounding and read this book. But measures like that, but you most definitely have to attack any type of disciplinary actions with a loving heart. Because if you are anger and you make a decision to address a child that's out of control through your means of discipline, well, your anger is only going to spill out onto the child. And that's not going to yield a good result. Because what you are teaching at that point is hatred. It's either love or hate at the end of the day. So you have to make a conscious decision on how you want to address your children. We all want the very best for our children. And tough love sometimes is difficult, I think, but there are a lot of instances where you just have to let your child fail at some of the things they do in life, even though it hurts maybe, and they're going down the wrong path. It is their journey, and it is part of you guys. I hear soul contract coming to mind here. So let them carry up their journey. It's not your job to always step in and save them, because them lessons that they can gain from their downfalls will help them along the way later in life. Yes. So it is always best to attack any situation in the direction of love and compassion. So that's that. And never act out there, make a decision when you're angry, because we know how kids can get us really upset sometimes. After working 12 hours a day, Poonam, you look like you're dying to say something. So yeah, please.
It's not so much as wanting to say something. It's more like there's, from what you said, there's a varying level of how can we be a parent to a child that is totally what you would say going out of control. That's what you said, right? That the child is out of control, then the parenting has to be a different style, opposed to a child that is kind of semi-conscious. Then it's easier to be a parent to that child.
Right. I think the parenting should remain the same, whether you're trying to regain or put the child back on a correct path, a more peaceful path, I should say, opposed to, the behavior is always love. So that's never going to change unless you, of course, had a shift, and then obviously your parenting and everything's going to change. But I don't think all in all, ultimately, I don't think the parenting should ever change. You should always handle everything in that fashion with love and compassion. I've done that with my 17, 18-year-olds, and they used to roll their eyes and, oh, okay, another lecture. But there did come a day where I got that phone call and said, thank you. You always tried to express to me and make me understand why what I was doing was wrong. And, I thought you just didn't like me. Because as a parent, we have an obligation to keep our children safe while they can't, at a young age. And of course, you want to try to give them good direction in life. And many of the times, our kids are going to lose their way and need some good direction. And that's all we got to do is push them in that direction. And that direction is always going to be love.
Beautiful. So the other part to this seems like it could be ego thing, like a parent or teacher being fulfilled by inflicting someone in pain. Seems like it could be ego thing. It's not so much as an ego. They're not going, I'm in ego and that's why I'm going to inflict pain on you. We have to understand where there is anger, there's always pain underneath. That's what Eckhart says. So there's pain in that, like I have compassion for my mother. So Zachary, have compassion for these parents or that generation. Like April was saying, right? Parents, like Eckhart's parents were a lot more unconscious than Eckhart's generation, where Eckhart is 72 years old, right? Then comes a next generation of parenting. So as parents have evolved, they become more and more conscious, but there is always pain underneath. If you look at the story of your parent, you'll realize that your mother or father would have been molested, your mother or father would have gone through, like, if you look at the 20th century, people have been through Nazi Germany, Holocaust, World War I, World War II. How much pain, right? In the collective consciousness, there was so much pain. So what are they under? Outside anger, inside pain, and I'm going to inflict it. And the infliction is just repeat this conditioned pattern of hitting, right? That's the easiest. Violent words is one way, and then violent action is the second way. So that's the compassion. They have a mental illness. And that's what Eckhart says is, how can we judge their illness? The only recourse is compassion. And that's why that degree of presence power is needed from within us, so that we can generate that compassion for all these unconscious human beings, which our parents are, if they're hitting, right? Kelly, you want to say something about this, Zachary's?
Sure.
Thank you.
Hi, Kelly.
Hey, Caesar. Good to see you. Just sort of monitoring the group chat, and Diane Lempicke, as I dropped my phone, makes a really good point that violence begets violence, and violence is a symptom of pain and trauma, and the trauma that we hold is often dismissed and not looked at, and people just keep repeating the same patterns over and over and over again. Growing up, I was only ever spanked once by my dad, and we both cried about it, and it never happened again. My parents growing up were very good at communicating and making the point of the lesson without needing to resort to spanking me or physically disciplining me, which I know in my generation, generally, from what I witnessed growing up, was very unusual and uncommon. Is one of the reasons why my friends sort of generally liked coming over, is because they felt really safe at my place around my parents, because my parents would always talk and explain everything, absolutely everything they possibly could. And they would take the time and explain any question that I had, any question my brother had, any question that any of my friends had. And growing up, and when I started going to school in the city, when I was, even going to university, just realizing how unusual my growing up experience really was, and how grateful I am for that contrast. And years later, when I worked in the youth home, I was able to apply very consciously that entire lesson of growing up and being present through communication with young men and boys who had only known violence, either mental, emotional, or physical. And sometimes it was really hard because people are stuck in their patterns and they expect certain things, and they constantly push to get that pattern validated and that pattern triggered in others, so that their egos, completely unconscious, that their egos are actually wanting that. I personally do not believe in violence at all, even though I am a martial artist. I've trained for years to learn how to defend myself and those around me, if I ever should, ever have the need. With my, either my students or the young people in my care in the youth home, or the ones that I find in my life now, I've never ever felt a need for violence. I've never believed in it in the first place, thankfully, gratefully, because of the wonderful example that I have from my mom and dad. And even though my grandparents all grew up in that generation where physical discipline was, the strap or the cane or whatever implement was closest at hand, I was very lucky that both sets of my grandparents did not believe in corporal punishment either. So I'm a firm believer in not needing physical punishment to make a point. There are lots of other ways to teach cause and consequence. And especially when kids are growing up and they want to do something and they haven't, cleaned the room, or they haven't finished doing the chore, there are lots of ways to communicate and just not follow through for them and teach them cause and consequence. So that's my simple 2 cents. Is it's very doable to raise children without needing punishment to be violent, or for it to be physical, or even mental or emotional. It's just simple cause and consequence.
Thank you so much, Kelly. So you agree that it is like a conditioned pattern?
Oh yes, absolutely. Violence can definitely be a conditioned pattern. Well, all violence is generally a conditioned pattern. Sometimes we have these things embedded in our energy field and we're completely unconscious of it, and keep recreating patterns that are abusive, be they through physical violence or mental, emotional, or whatever. Everything's a conditioned pattern until we break it.
And that's our purpose in life, is to discover all our compulsions and tendencies, right?
Yep.
What our conditioning, past conditioning is.
Yes, that's the learning. That's the refinement.
Beautiful. Thank you. I'll move to Michelle. Michelle, did you want to say something about this topic?
Yeah, I think you already had asked me. I put in my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. George, did you want to say something about this topic, or?
May I? May
Sure.
I?
Go ahead.
Okay. The gentleman, I don't know him, and my opinion, aside from other people, try to express my beliefs. Don't want nobody to take it up for themselves. I have no need to try to control or tell anybody the way they should think, the way they should act. But anybody who's an expert in martial arts is ready for a fight any minute. I don't think a peaceful man would ever take up martial arts only if he's only fighting himself, but he's ready, you know. In Buddhism, which I studied for many years, I don't remember how actually the story goes, but a very good man, you know, a very good man that's trained to fight, and he's getting a communication or something comes up and he's trying to communicate and maybe he's a little frustrated or whatever comes up because things come up because it's wrong that you're trying to condition your mind, and that's no good, condition your mind or anything like that. You see, the mind, the human being, is just a bundle of emotions, feelings. They arise, they cease, it's continuous. You're never going to put a stop to that. That is mind. It's always going to be that way. You're happy now, later you're upset. You want to control now, later you're laughing, later you're sorrow. You see, you got to see it's ceasing and arising. It's a bundle of the body, the four elements, whatever you want to call it, and the mind is just unceasing emotions, feelings, thoughts, one after another. There's no stop to it. But like he said, you could be conscious. So a good gentleman, a very honest, very moral, very virtue, that knows martial arts. When it comes to it, he's got a nice suit, nice clothes. He'll roll up his sleeves and he'll get his point across. My view of the situation the gentleman was talking. When you're a peaceful man, he probably knows because he knows martial arts. So he probably knows this little saying that goes, you know, when you're attacked, either criticized or physically, you take 3 steps backwards and you gather yourself, and it's like moving forward 3 yards. I'm sorry, it's all I believe, it's all I could put in, trying to help you guys. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you. Caesar, you wanted to say something? I know I see a raised hand.
Yes. I just wanted to respond to that a little bit, and saying that martial artists are always ready for a fight, and a peaceful man wouldn't take that. I've studied martial arts myself for 17 years and attained a very high level in the ranks. And the discipline and mental aspect, and I'm sure Kelly's going to tell you much of the same, is far outweighs the physical ability of what martial arts is. Totally says it a lot too. Yield to overcome. So the mental aspect of the martial arts is a very peaceful and logical one. So I just wanted to just throw that in there because it was never, it wasn't never about the fights. And as a martial artist ready for any fight, he can well defend himself, but he also has the mental capacity to diffuse a situation because of that type of training. Yeah. So
Thank you, Caesar.
Yes.
Appreciate it. I actually wanted to end with Candy's question. Candy's question is how to distinguish between intuition and imagination. And I love that Candy's here. She always attends all our Facebook Live Q&As. So April, you want to get started on how to distinguish between intuition and imagination? Michelle, you're next.
Oh, it didn't want to unmute for a second there. They're linked. So that would, they are linked. You can develop your intuition through imagination. So I don't want to discredit the imagination. Intuition is, it's more a sense of knowing. It's trying to think of how do I describe it? It's an inner sense of knowing. It's an energy. Imagination is playful. It can be on purpose. I can purposely imagine, a purple elephant right now. Intuition is more of a download. It's from source. It's more energetic. It is something that is developed. You can develop it through imagination, but the difference is that it's more of a download. It's more of a sense of knowing, having a sense of awareness or knowing for no rhyme or reason, really. I just had one the other day. Actually, my mom jumped me quite a bit the other morning. She did it twice in a row, but she did it the other morning where I woke up and she just literally just like jumped me and just threw all this stuff at me, just bam, 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 bam. So I took all that is intuition. That was just given to me. It was just handed to me. It was downloaded. And I ended up she wanted me to talk to one of my daughters. So I did for 3 hours. I ended up having to talk to one of my daughters. So I was given guidance. I was giving information. That's another thing. Imagination won't necessarily give you guidance or direction. So that's another difference that I find from it. So I'll kind of stop there because there's so many others that can say something. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much, April. I feel intuition is almost like a psychic ability, isn't it? It almost is like the depth of our psychic ability is when intuition arises. If not, we can easily miss it. If you're
Well, I was going to, that's why I was going to, you have to come over more if you want to. I was going to let others, we all have intuition. We all have it. So it is just that feeling, that sense, that knowing. But if you want to go beyond the basic intuition that we are all born with, then you develop the psychic ability. We all actually have psychic ability too, but if you want to actually develop it as a skill, as something that you can utilize readily, yes, you develop it.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you. Michelle, did you want to say something about this?
Yeah, I think the topic is very interesting. I mean, it's something that I'm trying to cultivate more of my own intuition. So I've been taking a morning meditation mini series, I would say, through an app that I'm using, Insight Timer. But I think it's more like April was saying, more of a depth of a knowing, like even your gut. And I don't know if the synchronicities that happen in life or like tapping into some of your intuitive powers, that you're able to channel that a little bit more. And I'm not sure I'm using the language appropriately. And imagination, I mean, I think is more external, right? It's like what you want to create in life. So I think it's more outward, possibly projecting, and not to say that's not a judgment. It's just, I think it's where intuition is more inward. I think imagination may be more outward and manifesting in the outer world and what we could create, which is endless, right? So from not having the skills that most of the panelists have, that would be my layman's perspective.
Beautiful. Thank you, Michelle. I love the term Florence Scovel Shinn uses for intuition. She calls it the inner teaching. And the inner teaching is like, supposing I'm about to leave the door, something tells me, and my son is home, and something tells me, pick up the keys and then leave out the door. I could leave out the door, right? And just like go out, like if I'm in upstairs or leave the home. But something tells me pick up the keys, and sure enough, what will happen is when I come back, he would have left to check the mail or left to do something and lock me out. Right? if I didn't have that if I didn't have that awareness, and that's why I feel it's a psychic ability, because the more presence power we have, the more the intuition kicks in. The more you can see the moments
Hello.
of. Just 1 second, George. The more we have the psychic ability to pick up that we need to pick up the keys, or you're taking an exit and you go, no, I'm not going to go in that, I'm not going to make a right turn here, I'm going to make a left turn here. We are in a strange area and we go the left turn, right? And that's that intuition. Imagination, I feel, is just what comes to mind, right? Pictures and images and all that. So, make sense?
Yes.
Thank you. Kelly, did you want to go next?
Sure. Pretty much,
Well, you guys,
Go ahead, Kelly.
Poonam, you and April have pretty much covered the topic. It's exactly that, where to find a parking spot. Intuition is that knowing. Intuition is all about being able to receive information and understand it without needing it explained to you. Imagination is very much parallel to intuition. It can be used in conjunction with intuition at certain levels of awareness to generate a focused understanding. The way that you use imagination is very much the way that you use your awareness in a focused way to create a focused intention. So they both work together, but they are also quite separate things. Imagination is exactly, the ability to imagine a purple elephant or a green sky. The context is important. The context of how we are applying both, either separately or together, is really important to understand, because that determines the mechanics of our awareness that we actually use to fuel either or both together. So again, for me, it comes back to feeling. Intuition is about, connecting the source, understanding where a parking spot is, understanding how to, pick up those keys and put them in your pocket to make sure nobody walks off with them, or not to forget your phone, or to sort of be able to almost be prescient and understand what someone's going to ask before they ask it. There are in the yogic tradition what are called siddhis, and the various descriptions of being empathic, as we like to call it in the West, the different types of clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience, etc., etc. When we practice to be healers, physical healers with energy, bioenergetic medicine, we learn how to use various levels of those psychic talents all together, all at the same time, so that we can better support the person that we are working with and facilitate their journey. Channeling is very specific in terms of accessing what physicists like to call the quantum fields, and also accessing those areas of information beyond the five senses that are actually connected to the layers of our auric fields or our energy fields. There are two ways that I understand that you can access your intuition. One is through mental and astral projection outward into those fields of energy, and the other is by going inside and connecting with your heart and being present with your own connection with source. And the first one, the astral and mental projection, is way easier, way simpler. Being a firm believer in the second method of being aligned with your heart and present and knowing how much harder work it is to be present and to maintain that discipline. It is sometimes no surprise that people will sometimes shy away from the harder path of being present emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and energetically. It's not for the faint of heart, but the knowing and the depth of knowing, the depth of connection to information is quite more substantial and quite, or a lot more clear, I guess you could say, because you have, when you work through your own limited belief systems and you understand how to be aligned and centered in your heart and present after you work through limited belief systems, the clarity and the perception of information is entirely different. So, and so does your imagination change as well. And understanding how they both work together also deepens. So, you know, while I can keep talking about this, because there's a lot, and this is like one of those topics where it's just like, wow, you know, we could compare and we could, you know, share stories and stuff like that. But the reality is that it all boils down to feeling. When you understand what you're feeling, oh, wow, goosebumps. When you understand what you are feeling and why you are feeling it, you understand and you know how your intuition is interacting with your imagination to give you clarity. And from my experience, that clarity can only be achieved by understanding how to be present.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. You hit it out the park. It almost is like intuition, there's some kind of goodness, like just like the feelings of gratitude have a goodness about it. Intuition has a goodness kind of feeling, because I remember both you, Kelly, I mean, Caesar, I know because he's posted back in, it's been years, Caesar's, who Caesar is, I know because we exchanged quite a few posts on Facebook, but intuitively, April one day posted, we were doing Facebook Live Q&A, Kelly, with Louise, and April posted a response, and intuitively, she wrote, I want to be on this panel. And I said, yeah, just direct message me. And I thought that she would be one of those that wouldn't direct message me, right? We don't know whether that person is, and here comes a direct message from April. That's like intuition that she knew that she needed to respond at that moment. Why did she respond to one of you all were talking and April responded right then? The same thing with you. I think Louise was, we were on a Facebook Live Q&A and Kelly was responding on the phone. He was one of the online people. One of the things that I noticed was Lakshmi, I was asking about depression, what Byron Katie's quote is, and Lakshmi actually responded, she calls it the ultimate tantrum of the ego is depression. And Lakshmi brought that word, tantrum. So I kind of needed to thank you, Lakshmi, for that help. I don't know, it just escaped me. But I really loved Byron Katie's insight on it. We talked about this regarding the first question, Kelly. Okay, so we'll wrap it up with Caesar talking about intuition and imagination. Thank you so much, Kelly. Beautiful.
Awesome answers all the way around the panel, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. I don't really know what to add. Intuition, to me, I use it as a guidance throughout my days. What feels right. And you do have to be kind of rooted in presence to get that signal, because ultimately intuition is an antenna. You're seeking sometimes it just comes without you trying to gain clarity on something and what path to take, what road to turn down. But most typically, imagination is mind stuff. Intuition is heart stuff. Maybe not even heart stuff, but imagination is definitely mind stuff. Sadhguru always says, you know, the two things we suffer our memory and imagination. And he's referring to the past and the future there. However, imagination is a good tool. I think, Michelle, you just spoke on it, when manifesting, because you have to create the feeling of already having what you're after, as if you already had it. Once you can obtain that thought with that feeling, you know, when the thought and the feeling marry, it has to be. It's just the way it is. It's the law. But intuition, yeah, everybody said, you know, it's clarity. It's a knowing. You do have to be rooted in the present to some degree to be able to understand your intuition, because it's basically telepathy from source. You know, it's your inner being who has the direct connection to the same energies that create worlds. We hear that a lot from Abraham Hicks, yeah. But it is a beautiful thing. And since we're talking about intuition, one of the things that hamper your intuition is fluoride. This is a fact. There's no scientific evidence that fluoride has any benefits for your teeth. And that's what they push it. It's not a conspiracy theory, it's a fact. We never learned about, I never learned to know anybody that learned about the pineal gland to any degree of schooling, yet it is our most sacred and important gland in our entire body, because the pineal gland is where we get our intuition from, and it is 100% responsible for your connection with source. So when you're able to root yourself in the present moment, and you have this connection, you are dialed in, or as Abe says, tuned in, turned in, and tapped on. Something of that effect. You have the ability to know with clarity. Yeah, precisely. So yeah, imagination, like I said, is be careful with it. You know, use it because imagination could go the other way too. You know, imagination, you could be imagining getting kicked out of your house because you didn't pay the rent this month. Your imagination can take you places that don't feel good. So use it only in a positive way. You know, flow with the beautiful, good feeling energy of this planet, and pay attention. Basically, use your intuition for guidance. You know, when you come to a fork in the road, call upon it. And when you get the feeling to act, go left or go right, trust it. Trust it 100%. Michelle, that's, you know, you say you're leaning in this way, and like April said perfectly, everybody is born with intuition. It is your connection with source. We are vibrational beings. So we are directly connected to source. We are an extension of source energy. And we have the ability to know all. And that is only through clarity that we have that ability. I mean, through our intuition, I'm sorry. Only through our intuition that allows that. So trust in it. As soon as you doubt it, the next time you go to use your intuition to make a decision, you will also doubt that. So when you make the decision based on your intuition, and it's usually pretty sudden, you call upon it, source answers immediately. Might take you a second or two to grasp it, but don't let the mind get involved, because as soon as you start thinking about it, whether you're making the right decision or not, that usually takes 7 seconds before your mind kicks in and starts talking you out of you know, the impulse that you're supposed to act on. So it's important to act on your intuition when you call upon it immediately, and then trust it. And then if you want confirmation that you made the right decision, to ask yourself where you're at. You're there, made the right decision. Even though it might not take you into a pleasant situation, there's something for you to learn there when it doesn't feel good. So don't ever doubt it. And the imagination, like I said, is you got to be careful with it, but it can definitely be used as a great manifesting tool. Beautiful thing. Just don't use it other than that, unless you're going to imagine the purple elephants. Hi, April. Hi, Michelle. Hi, everybody. I always love to see your smiling faces. I get so excited. I felt anxiety. I don't know if it was anxiety because I was late today coming in. I just couldn't wait to get on here. It wasn't anxiety. It was more excitement, I think. But it's good to see all your smiling faces. So that's
Thank you so much, Caesar. So, intuition, how would she know that this is coming from intuition? Did Michelle say synchronicity? Like we would experience more synchronicity if we were intuitively following something, then we would see more synchronicity. And it is almost like you can say planetary intelligence or universal intelligence or God, whatever you want to call it, please show me a sign, and they will be a sign, right? And it may be a sign like you're thinking of, let's say you were thinking of a bedspread, and intuitively you'll open a magazine and you'll see a bedspread, that exact bedspread in the magazine. That's intuitively the sign is being shown that you need to go get that bedspread, right?
Yep. Can I piggyback off you for a sec?
Please.
Yeah. So when you are present and you're aware, the universe is constantly, literally constantly throwing impulses at you. And you being in the present are able to pick these up, because if you're not rooted in the present moment, you'll never be able to get these impulses. So it's constantly sending over here, leading you in the way, because your inner being knows the path of least resistance to get you where you want or need to be. So life is always constantly sending you these little impulses. Pay attention to them. And when you get that feeling like you're supposed to do something, do it. Just like Poonam just said. So you're wondering something, and that is alignment. That's exactly what she's talking about. It's a synchronicity, it's alignment. It's intuitive. What just happened when she explains it like that about the bedsheet. That's beautiful, but pay attention. When you are just rooted, just know that the universe is sending signals nonstop. You might hear lyrics on a song that you've been listening to 30 years that you never heard that, that particular line before. And now all of a sudden you heard it. You might be walking down the street and you over it, but you're rooted in the present moment. And then you might hear a couple on the porch talking. And as you pass, you're like, oh my God, can't believe I just heard that. I was just thinking about that, wondering what to do. Now I know. Them are the little impulses. Them are the little things that happen nonstop throughout your day, 1,000 times a day. And when you are conscious of it, you're conscious of that this is happening all around you. You'll start acting a little more upon it. And it keeps leading you to the next moment, to the next moment, to the next moment. And that's what they call the flow of life. That's all.
Beautiful. Thank you. And imagination could be used in a good way, in the sense like what Abraham Hicks says, we have stopped daydreaming. And when Abraham Hicks said that, I kind of remembered. So I grew up, and April and I have had this conversation. I grew up in my mom was a school teacher. We were really poor. I was in homes where the roof was leaking. So when I see people putting pants under, you had to put pants under wherever the leaking roof is, because monsoon season is just 3 months. So you just find all the buckets and dish pans and just put it under wherever the roof is leaking. So, but I do remember that as a child, I would read a lot of mystery books and books, James Bond, Agatha Christie. And so I would have an intention that the US, like people are so comfortable in the US, right? And this is like as a 10, 11-year-old child. And look what that, and now when Abraham Hicks says, I think I was daydreaming. I was manifesting moving to the US through that daydream, right? Whenever I was reading about it, I saw myself here and I daydreamed it. So eventually I am here, right? Or I got here. I also think the same thing with the shower. I've stated this quite a few times. Like we didn't have very good bathrooms and we didn't have running water. So just having a clean bathroom, it fills me with joy. Like every day in the morning, the moment I open the bathroom door and it's a beautiful, clean bathroom, that like the shower stall is clean, everything is clean. So that gives me great joy. We had fun. This was incredible. So thank you so much. I cannot thank you all enough for contributing today. It was like incredibly amazing insights. Kelly's talking about the fluoride. Yeah. Kelly has all kinds of inside information. One day we need to, before this Facebook Live starts, if not, we'll get canceled. Like YouTube wouldn't accept our video and Facebook won't let us live stream. If you start talking about...
I'm a history nut, and Caesar started talking about the pineal gland and fluoride, and one way to detoxify the pineal gland is by using spirulina and chlorella to which pull out the heavy metals from the brain. And the pineal gland, if you look at the eye of Horus from Egypt, the eye of Horus is actually a cross section of the brain, and the eye is actually the pineal gland of the cross section of the brain, where the hypothalamus and that little squiggle goes down to the amygdala and stuff like that. Fluoride was used by the Nazis during World War II in their death camps to keep everyone sedated. The right level of fluoride will keep a certain level of population sedated and compliant. And it calcifies the pineal gland and begins to basically shut down a person's connection to source. So think about that next time you think about fluoride. Anyhow, yes.
So give away your fluoride toothpaste. Throw away your fluoride toothpaste.
Xylitol. I use Xylowhite toothpaste. For a long time. I don't know where you get it in the States. I get it at VitaHealth, Sunrise, health food stores. You might have to order it online, but it has no fluoride in it. It uses xylitol, which is actually a natural substance that the body actually uses to rebuild your teeth.
Awesome. Great big help on health advice as well from Caesar. Comes sponsored by Caesar and Kelly. I'll switch to that. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic evening. Many blessings. Much love. Good night.
Hey.
Bye.